In my mind, I'm 13. Looking at me, you would probably think it too, but I know that my biological age is 18. But what happens when I'm 25? And I'm still in the mindset of a 13-year-old. I'll be completely out there honest with you. I have a doll collection. I still play with Barbies. No, I don't make them talk. I just play with their hair. I like braiding their hair.
When you went to see doctors, did she tell you what to say? Did she tell you what not to say?
She told me that I couldn't speak during a doctor's appointment, that it would just solely be her. She would tell me, sit in the wheelchair, play with your Barbie dolls.
After performing a line-by-line audit of Gypsy Rose Blanchard's revised edition of My Time to Stand and the original published memoir, there are two substantial changes to the text to speak of. The first is an addition of a line in Chapter 3. The text previously read, "Mama preferred that I not play with Barbie dolls. She didn't want me to see the anatomy, no matter how poorly scaled, of a woman." Readers of the first publishing originally caught this statement and called it out. They presented their claims along with previous inconsistent statements made by Gypsy and Dee Dee, as well as photos of Gypsy with a Barbie doll and Barbie dolls in their home at the crime scene, all prior to the murder of her mother. Though many inconsistencies were found and noted by readers, this one was the most frequently cited, and it gained the attention of Gypsy and those closest to her who addressed it on social media. It was stated to be an oversight because she wasn't able to proofread the writing very well due to her many prior engagements at the time. Basically, Gypsy was too busy to read it, but she did confront the issue at least to some degree in the public. Then, Gypsy, along with her family and friends, made the questioning public aware that corrections to the memoir would be made in an upcoming publishing.
Let me tell you,
It's hard. Yeah.
that's kind of our fault because we were so busy and we didn't finish proofreading it. Like they said, the Saints were against the Kansas City Chiefs. No, it wasn't. They said Laura was a nurse. No, she wasn't. She was a housekeeper at the hospital. That was Dee Dee's ex stepmom, but I mean, there are some, little screw ups, but they said they're going to correct it. I mean, when they do, they do. I think for the second reprint of it, it'll all be corrected. But I still haven't read it all because I'm not ready for some chapters. I'll read it when I'm mentally ready. That might be a time I drink a whole glass of wine.
The revised edition, to which text has been added to Chapter 3, reflects the Barbie doll statement now as saying, "Mama preferred that I not play with Barbie dolls until I was at least 11 or 12 years old." It seems the inconsistency found by readers and publicly called out with evidentiary proof against the author's claim has been corrected to some measure. I'm sure there are people who will say Gypsy looks a lot younger than 11 in the photo with the Barbie. And then there will be some like me who will say it isn't worthy of note when a mother chooses to hold back on allowing a specific toy to be played with until a child reaches a certain age. Parents have reasons for doing things, and nothing egregious happened, even if Gypsy's account of Dee's parenting choices happened to be true in this instance. It's not enough of an issue to kill someone over, and it doesn't justify anything Gypsy did. The second substantial change to the text of the revised edition appears in Chapter 16, whereas in the first publishing it read as, "It didn't matter whose hand held the knife or whose impulse it was to cut off a dead woman's head." In the most recently published revised edition, the line, "whose impulse it was to cut off a dead woman's head," has been removed from the text. The passage now reads as, "It didn't matter whose hand held the knife. The police didn't see a distinction between Nick and me." The line which was printed in the first publishing was helpful to Gypsy's narrative regarding Nick, her co-conspirator and former co-defendant in the murder of her mother, Claudine Dee Dee Blanchard. Gypsy claims that she only asked Nick to kill her mother and that she didn't ask him to make the murder so gruesome. In the first publishing, the line, "It didn't matter whose hand held the knife or whose impulse it was to cut off a dead woman's head," at first glance, does seem to support Gypsy's claim that Nick was the one who wanted to make the murder as heinous as possible. So it can be inferred that this is why she wrote it in. While that line may seemingly serve her narrative on the surface, in reality, that line also may have had legal implications because the book was published while Nick's legal appeal for his case was pending. I'm not claiming to know that this is the reason for the removal of the line, but it's worth discussion as to why it doesn't appear in the revised edition. If the impetus to remove the line comes from the simultaneous publishing and pending appeal, then it seems likely that the removal is to avoid opening up trial record in which Gypsy claims she had never been in the room while Nick stabbed her mother. The line creates two issues. Gypsy writes it as though the finished act of cutting off her mother's head was the intent behind the impulse of the person holding the knife. However, it was never stated in the interrogation that the goal was decapitation. So the question is, how does Gypsy know that an impulse occurred to cut off a dead woman's head rather than cut the back of her neck? The other, more compelling issue is how Gypsy could have known whether her mother was dead when her neck was cut if she wasn't in the room. The interrogation footage does not show Nick as knowing Dee was dead when he claims to have cut the back of her neck. In fact, if you listen very carefully, the detective is asking questions, and it is implied that Dee was alive when this cutting is claimed by Nick to have occurred.
You only stabbed her 4 times? Are you sure about that?
Well, as in stabbing, I stabbed her first.
Okay.
But I did actually cut her one other time besides that.
Okay, where'd you cut her
On
at?
the back of her neck.
Okay. And did you use the same knife that you
Yep.
did the others with?
Yep.
Okay. And when you did the cross the back of the neck, did that even cause an injury, or did you see any blood or anything?
Yeah, she was bleeding.
Okay, she's bleeding. And so did she scream or holler, or
Yeah, she did.
what was she saying?
First she said help, and then she didn't recognize who I was. So she
Okay.
said, "Who are you?" And then,
She said, "Who are you?"
yeah,
Okay. And she didn't recognize who you are, and she says help, and then what does she say?
and then she called up for Gypsy, but Gypsy didn't do anything.
The changes in the current publishing of the memoir include one substantial line addition and one substantial line removal, resulting in the same number of words in both publishings. Each edition has its own ISBN number to denote that the publishings include different material, but the word count is the same. It appears to be meant that the average reader would see no changes to the text of the original beyond the prologue, but in a line-by-line audit of the book, the changes are seen. This doesn't prove there was an attempt to hide changes or deceive the public, but it could mean that the publisher wanted a quiet release of the book without any attention being drawn. This could have been part of a negotiation regarding the changes that the publisher had with the author, and I can't definitively say who was the driving force behind those changes. It could have been Gypsy, the author, if her attorney read the book and knew Nick's pending appeal could be impacted by the publishing. It could have been the publisher who wanted to remove the line for the same reason. It wasn't changed because Gypsy felt the need to add the line in relation to the Barbie dolls. That's not enough to create a whole new edition, but an issue regarding a murder defendant's legal appeal is. These are the changes. You can see them here. The question remains, why were the changes made? What made Gypsy want to include that grotesque detail in the first place? Was it book sales? Lack of remorse? The thrill of a hidden in plain sight confession? Or something else? Finally, did the removal of that line prompt Gypsy to write disparaging but legally empty statements about Nick in the new edition's prologue as a way to make up for what she now considers lost material against him when the line was removed from Chapter 16? Did you find anything in the text that I missed? Please share in the comments.